Hello everyone, this video is about the Odin-Class coastal defense ships. So stay tuned till the end, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Oh yeah, one more thing. I'm planning on changing the name of the channel, and I'm looking for recommendations. So something that's more recognizable. Chapter 1, Naming the Odin-Class. The late 19th century was a time of great naval expansion for Germany. For these vital defenders, the Germans turned to their mythology, naming warships after powerful gods and mythical figures. Among these were the Odin-class coastal defense ships, named for Odin, the chief god of in Norse mythology. The Odin class followed the earlier Siegfried class, also coastal defense ships. They were kind of like half sisters. They were kind of a they were pretty much a modified version of the Siegfried class. The Siegfrieds were smaller and less heavily armed than their successors. The Odin class, with their namesake's strength in mind, were designed to be more powerful. They were bigger, carried the same guns, boasted thicker armor. These improvements reflected the rapid evolution of naval technology and the Kaiserliche Marine's desire for a more capable defensive force. In the late 1880s, the German Kaiserliche Marine grappled with the problem of what type of capital ship to build in the face of limited naval budgets. General von Capri, the new chief of Admiralty, requested a series of design proposals, which range the this design script is pretty much the same as the previous video, so feel free to skip ahead. But if you're new here, please keep on listening. Which range from in size from small 2,500 ton coastal defense ships armed with a battery of two 8.3-inch guns to heavily armed 10,000 ton ocean going battleships equipped with seven 12-inch guns. Capri ordered 10 coastal defense ships to guard the entrances to the canal. Since even opponents of the Navy in the Reichsdiet, which means imperial diet, arranged that such vessels were necessary. The initial design, the Siegfried class, was based on the smallest proposal, but scaled up to add a third main battery gun, the caliber of which was increased from 9.4 inches. Two of these guns were carried in shielded baguettes side by side forward, as German naval theorists still favored ramming attacks requiring end-on fire capability. So the two turrets up front were pretty much placed right next to each other instead of being one forward and one behind. By the time the next group of ships were to be ordered to complete Capri's program in 1892, naval theorists have shifted away from end-on fire attacks toward traditional line ahead tactics that required a heavy broadside. At that time, the German Navy had begun building the Brandenburg class battleships that reflected this evolution in naval thinking. Capri had resigned in 1889, and following a reorganization of the German naval command structure by Kaiser Wilhelm II, Frederick von Hefren, the state secretary of the Reich Marine, or RMA for short, was now in control of naval construction. Hauptmann considered proposals to redesign that was to become the Odin class into a more traditional pre-dreadnought arrangement. A fourth 24-centimeter gun would be added, but rather than the individual baguettes, the guns would be carried into a pair of twin gun turrets, one forward and one aft. The full-length armored belt would be reduced to a short belt capped with armor traverse bulkheads to offset the weight of the additional gun. New, more effective crump armor would be employed to save weight as well, since less steel could be used to achieve the same level of protection. The RMA initially planned to build four other ships to complete the 10 that the Reichstag had authorized. The proposal came to nothing. However, as the cost of the Brembergs proved to be 25% higher than they expected, I mean, that's of all projects. Almost pretty much every project when it comes to military goes over budget. As a result, the 7th and 8th coastal defense ships, Odin and Ägir, were built to a modified version of the Siegfried design that incorporated the updated armor layout, along with other minor changes that included the installation of military masts and the omission of anti-torpedo nets. The 19th and 10th vessels, provisionally named W and X, were slated for the 1893 and 1894 budget year that was rejected by the Reichstag. General characteristics: the Odin-Class ships were 76.40 meters in length. I am including both metric and imperial for those Europeans in our midst. They were also 250 feet and 8 inches long at the waterline, and they were 79 meters and 259 feet, 2 inches long overall. They had a beam of 15.20 meters or 49 feet 10 inches, and the draft of 5.61 meters or 18 feet 5 inches forward, and 5.41 meters or 17 feet 11 inches aft. I gotta admit, saying two different things is harder than saying one thing. Like the preceding Siegfried class, Odin and Ägir are subsequently rebuilt from 1901 to 1903 and 1903 and 1904 respectively. The hulls were lengthened somewhat to 84.8 meters or 278 feet 3 inches at the waterline, and 76.1 meters or 282 feet 8 inches long overall. The beam was also slightly increased to 15.4 meters or 50 feet 6 inches. The forward draft was slightly decreased to 5.5 meters or 18 feet 4 inches, while the aft draft is slightly increased to 5.4 meters or 18 feet. Gotta admit, I think the next video I'm gonna just do one thing. The two ships had a redesigned displacement of 3,550 metric tons, or 3,490 long tons, and a maximum weight of 2,754 metric tons, or 2,711 long tons. After the reconstruction, displacement was increased to 4,100 tons as designed, and a maximum of 4,376 tons. I'm just gonna skip the long tons for Odin and 4,292 tons for Ägir. Odin and Ägir use the same transverse and longhexagonal steel frames construction as the Siegfried-class ships. The ships had 8 watertight compartments and a double bottom that ran for 60% of the ship's length. As the Siegfrieds, a 9th watertight compartment was also added when the ships were redone. Their hulls featured a pronounced tumbrel home. The ships were described as good sea boats with gentle motion and very responsive from commands from the helm. However, the ships lost significant speed in heavy seas. The ships had a crew of 20 officers and 256 enlisted men, with an additional 6 officers and 22 men when serving as a flagship. The refit increased crew requirements to an additional 31 sailors normally, and the extra flagship crew increased to 9 officers and 34 men. The ships carried a number of smaller boats, including 1 picket boat, one pinnace, 2 cutters, 1 yawl, and 1 dinghy. Propulsion. Odin and Ägir were equipped with the same propulsion system that was on the Siegfried. 2 sets of 3-cylinder triple suspension engines, each with its own engine room. These engines drove a pair of 3-bladed screws that were 11 feet 6 inches in diameter. Odin had 8 marine-type boilers, while Ägir's engines were powered by 8 Thornycroft boilers. The ships had a maximum speed with Odin at 14.4 knots, but was somewhat slower than her design speed of 15 knots, and while Ägir's was slightly faster at 15.1 knots. Their engines were rated at 4,800 initiated horsepower, though on trials Odin managed only 4,650 in indicated horsepower, while Ägir reached 5,129 in indicated horsepower. Odin had 3 electric generators that provided 29 and 26 kilowatts at 67 volts, while Ägir was equipped with 6 generators that provided between 243 and 250 kilowatts at 120 volts. Because of her increased number of electrical generators, Ägir was nicknamed Elektrische Anna, which means Electric Anna. The ship stored up to 270 tons of coal, which enabled a range of 2,200 nautical miles at a cruising speed of 10 knots. After the refit, fuel bunkerage was increased to 370 tons of coal. This increased the sailing range to 3,000 nautical miles at 10 knots. After 1909, the capacity to store 100 tons of fuel oil was added. Armament. The ship's primary armament consisted of 3 24-centimeter KL-35 guns, in an arrangement that was very unusual for such large guns. 2 of the guns were mounted on a pair of MPL C-88 barbettes forward side by side, while the third was mounted on a single turret aft. The guns could train 150 degrees to either side of the center line, and depress to -4 degrees and elevate to 25 degrees. This enabled a maximum range of 13,000 meters or 14,000 yards. The guns had an ammunition storage of 174 rounds or 58 shells per gun. The guns had a rate of fire of around 2 shells per minute. The 1895 design for armor-piercing shells weighed around 140 kilograms or 310 pounds. The ships also had a secondary battery of 10 88-centimeter SKL-30 guns, which with 2,500 rounds of ammunition. The 88-centimeter gun fired 10 kilogram or 22-pound projectile at a muzzle velocity of 590 meters per second or 1,900 feet per second. The guns could sustain a rate of fire of approximately 15 rounds per minute. The ships were also equipped with 3 45-centimeter or 18-inch torpedo tubes. 2 were laterally in above-water swivel mounts, and the third was submerged in the hull. The torpedo tubes were supplied with a total of 8 torpedoes. Armor. The ships use a similar Krupp compound steel and teak armor protection scheme as the preceding Siegfried class. The upper section of the main armor belt was 220 millimeters thick, with the central citadel of the ships, where the ship's vitals were located. Behind this was 180 millimeters of teak, which was a type of wood, which gave a total thickness of 400 millimeters. So the steel was outside, and the wood was on the inside. The bow and stern were unprotected though. The lower section followed a similar pattern of steel armor distribution, although the thickness of the central portion of the belt was decreased to 120 millimeters. The conning tower roof was 30 millimeters thick, and the sides were 120 millimeters. The barbettes for the main battery and the cupolas for the secondary guns ranged in thickness between 30 to 200 millimeters thick, backed by 200 millimeters of teak. Chapter 2: The Ships of the Odin Class. SMS Odin was the leading ship of her class of coastal defense ships built for the Imperial German Navy. She had one sister ship, Ægir. Odin was named for the inconspicuous Norse god Odin. Odin is a widely revered god in the Germanic paganism. Norse mythology, the source of most surviving information about him, associates him with wisdom, healing, death, royalty, gallows, knowledge, war, battle, glory, sorcery, poetry, frenzy, and the runic alphabet, and depicts him as the husband of the goddess Frigg. She was built by the Kaiserliche Rift in Danzig. Odin was laid down on March 15th, 1893, was launched on November 3rd, and commissioned on September 22nd, 1896. SMS Ægir was the second and final member of the Odin class of coastal defense ships. The Panzerschaffel, built for the Imperial German Navy. Ægir was named for the Norse god Ægir, alchemized as Ægir, naming Old Norse Sea, is a Jerusalem and a personification of the sea in Norse mythology. In the Old Norse record, Ægir hosts the gods in his halls and is associated with brewing ale. She was built by the Kaiser Rift in Danzig as well. She was laid down on November 28th, 1892. She was launched on April 3rd, 1896, and was commissioned on the 5th of October, 1896. Chapter 3: The Service History of the Odin Class. Odin and Ægir saw only limited service in their intended roles. The revolutions in capital shipbuilding in the first decade of the 20th century rapidly made these ships obsolete. The Second Naval Law, passed on the 27th of March 1908, reduced the service life of all capital ships from 25 years to 20 years. This meant that the Odin-Class ships, along with a number of other vessels, were to be replaced as soon as possible. Odin and Ægir were replaced by the Kaiser-class battleships, König Albert and Prince Regent Leopold, respectively. But Odin ships themselves had quite the service history, though. Ægir and Odin were among the vessels that came to the assistance of the Neudeutscher Lloyd steamship SMS Kriegsmarine Theresa, which had run aground. They also helped pull free the protected cruiser Hansa, which had also run aground in the Great Belt. During the fleet maneuvers that year, Ægir served as the flagship of the 4th Division in the 2nd Squadron. The ship's participation in the exercises was cut short on the 28th of August, though, when she collided with the British steamer SMS Afrate off Deutscher Oft during a night training exercise. Afrozoit struck Ägir below her forward main battery gun on the starboard side below the waterline in the accident, causing a serious leak. She was forced to return to the Kaiser Rift in Kiel for repairs. The work was completed quickly, allowing Ägir to participate in the latter stage of the maneuvers. But Odin conducted wireless telegraphy experiments with the armored cruiser Friedrich Karl on the 20th of March, 1900. On the 2nd of June, Ägir and Odin assisted the passenger liner SMS Deutschland, which had run aground in the Steffenhof. Again, I don't why is it that ships like to run themselves aground? Is that like a reoccurring theme of ships running themselves aground? I know it's human error, but still, they had to help 3 ships who had run aground. Captains, what were they doing? But as the new battleships came along and those were intended for offensive operations, the Odin class was still retained for the coast defense duties. The ships served in this capacity through the start of World War I, until they were withdrawn from active service in 1915, along with their half-sisters of the Siegfried class. After she was pulled from combat duties, Odin serves as a tender in Wilhelmshaven. She was struck from the Naval Register on the 6th of December 1919 and sold to a Dutch Stern Co. shipping company in Hamburg. And by 1922, the ship had been rebuilt as a freighter, and she served in this capacity until she was scrapped in 1935. Ägir was also stationed in Wilhelmshaven after she was withdrawn from her coastal defense duties. She served as a barrack ship there. She was stricken from the Navy list on the 17th of June, 1919. She was also sold to the Bernstein Company for use as a freighter. On the 8th of December, 1929, the ship grounded herself off of the Karsö lighthouse on the Swedish island of Gotland. The situation proved to be unsalvageable. Actually, fun fact, her bow ornament is now on display at the Lupro Naval Memorial. Chapter 4, The Final Fate of the Odin Class. The end of World War I in 1919 marked the end of an era for the Kaiserliche Marine, including the Odin-Class ships. The Treaty of Versailles, which formally ended the war, imposed strict limitations on the size and strength of the German Navy. Many of Germany's warships, including most of its battleships, had to be surrendered to the Allied forces. Ägir met a more dramatic, if less dignified end. I mean, she did run herself aground to prevent herself from being scrapped. I guess ships have wills of their own as well. I mean, me of all people should know this. I play a game called Azure Lane. It's a game about anime girls who have the power of warships. Anyway, the Odin-Class ships, though not remembered as icons of naval power, played a vital role in German naval history. They represented the evolution of coastal defense in the late 19th century and served their country even when they became obsolete during a time of great conflict. Their story is a reminder that even in the ever-changing world of naval warfare, every ship has a part to play. the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video. Hit that like button and subscribe for more history videos like this one.